Welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here on Black Star Network. And today we have an amazing lineup, and we're talking about, of course, the pathway to adulting and how do you balance that? So for all of you who just had your high schoolers graduate, you graduated high school. Now what? I know the road to independence can be paved with so many different conversations and miscommunications, but our guests today are going to be able to allow us to put a pin in some places that are super important to being able to navigate the road to young adulthood. Today, we're joined by Katrina Smith of Empowered Roots Education and Consulting. We're also joined today by Deborah Bell. I'm sorry, hold on a second. We're also joined today by Deborah Bell of P3 Coaching and Consulting. And of course, we're also joined by Pam Sams of Pam Sams, or should I say Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies. Today, these ladies are going to tune us into what it means to get prepared. I know you parents and grandparents who've been out there raising these kids, you are super thrilled that they are about to be on their own, whether they choose to go the career path, the community college path, or go to college. But the first thing you got to do is help them figure out how to think for themselves. So ladies, let's talk about that for a moment. In the work that each of you do, young adults, especially when they've just graduated high school, are torn between, do I ask my parent for this information? Do I get them to do this for me? Should I try to make this decision on my own? So let's talk about it. I'm going to start with Katrina and tell us, what are some of the things that you believe, or at least one thing that now that you've graduated high school, what is the one thing that these high school students should be asking an adult in their life? Something that you can think of that they should ask.
One thing I think they should ask is, when do I start saving? How can I save? Because that is so important. After graduating high school, you just walked across that stage, you excited, you bout it, you ready to live your life. You don't have to listen to your parents. You come and go as you want. But do you have the funds to live the lifestyle that you have grown accustomed to?
Okay, so let's pause right there for a second, because Katrina, what you just said is important, because I hear young people say all the time, I graduated high school, I'm grown. The definition of when I'm grown is when you can pay your own bills, when you can, take care of the things you want on your own. Deb, what are your thoughts about that? What is the one thing that high schoolers should be asking?
The one thing I think that is real critical for this age group to ask once graduating is they need assistance in charting out what their next step will be. And often that age group lives in the immediate, and they don't always think about the broader future of where they're going and what they need along the way. So having someone to help them chart out, developing a plan, even if it's just for the first semester of school. When I worked at Houston Baptist University, one of my favorite students, all of them were my favorite, one of my favorite students in our Office of Career and Calling where I served, she would always come to me with her plan for the semester. And it was a great joy to help her navigate some of the things that she had already thought about. So I think that's an important key. How do I map out this next step?
I like that. Mapping out next steps is important. Pam Sams.
Mm-hmm. I think where you should start is really, how should I be spending? I always start with spending and budget with most people, especially with young people, because now you are out on your own, quasi out of the house, but you still have needs and you still have to figure out, what am I spending money on? Back in the day when we went to college, there was credit card applications, credit card vendors at every turn. And I know I got into a little credit card trouble myself earlier on and did not know how to spend. It's like, this is like free money or whatever. They really never explain it. So really, when kids get out, especially during this stage and they go to college, is, what should I be spending? How should I be spending? So you're not wasting your money or spending on frivolous things. So really sitting down with your child and discover what they could be spending on and what a reasonable budget would be for them.
So let's talk about that for a second, Pam, because everybody's getting money. They got their Venmo money, they got their PayPal money, they got all of their Cash App dollars from when they graduated. What should they be doing with that money? I know what they like to be doing with that money, but what are some realistic things that people should do with their high school graduation money?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if their tuition is paid and their books are paid and everything like that, then maybe they can treat themselves a little bit. Maybe buy some things for college, maybe fix up their dorm room, some niceties like that. And then, of course, there's a certain amount that you should save for the future as well, and to see that grow. Perhaps use that Venmo money. I know a lot of Cash App, I know Venmo, and I know a lot of those apps now are allowing kids to put some away, and then it gives a little bit of interest while it's in there. So some things that are nice for the dorm, probably some things that you may need to pay for if financial aid or tuition was not paid, or books, and then save some.
Save some. Katrina, when you think about, now you all have raised children, when you think about having that type of conversation related to saving money, having a career plan, having a pathway, when do you start having that conversation? Is it before they graduate? Is it during the summertime before they leave? If they're wrestling with getting a job versus going straight to college, when is the right time for parents to start having these conversations that could either make or break their child's future?
It's never too early to start having those conversations about the child's future. Give you an example. In elementary school, the conversation could be shaped around, what are your future goals? What are your dreams? What would you like to become? How many careers would you like to have, or jobs? As your child gets older and moves to middle school, what are you good at? Where do you see yourself? What would you like to accomplish in life? When you get to high school, what are you doing towards the goals that you have set? In the Smith household, we had family meetings. And so family meetings happened on Sunday. We talked about money. We talked about the calendar. We talked about what were your dreams and goals? What were you setting in place? If you had a goal for the semester, then we sit down. How are you going to work towards those goals? What are you going to do to accomplish that goal? How long is it going to take you to get to that goal? So it's never too early. You can start in elementary school laying the foundation for where does that child want to be? How do they see themselves? We all know that things change. And as they grow, their interests change. But the conversation should start at the elementary level.
I like that. So it's never too early or too soon to have those conversations. Deb, you mentioned about this career planning, and I know that a lot of schools, well, I won't say a lot, but some schools have done away with career development and transitioning. So a lot of students don't even know what their skill set is, what, as Katrina mentioned, they would be good at. How do you help young people navigate that type of, I guess, I won't say conversation, but it can be distressing for some people. Say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I should go to college, if I should get a job, and they don't have direction at home. How do you help them balance that emotional distress that they may be going through?
Yeah, that was a common issue that we had to address in the area where I served. So, of course, there are plenty of surveys and options on instruments that can help identify skill sets and things that a student might be proficient with based on personality, aptitude, those kinds of things. But having the conversation with students about what's important to them. The biggest thing that biggest response that I always got was, as it relates to career, is, well, I just want to help people. I want to help somebody. Well, then the next question for me would be, well, what does that look like for you? Is that in the medical field? Is that in accounting? What is it? And so that made them begin to think about where they would be a good fit. The conversation was always broad and pretty general at the beginning, because we had to weed through what they felt they could do. And then there were those students who didn't feel like they had any gifts, abilities, and talents at all. And so helping them to navigate seeing themselves maybe even for the first time and seeing what strengths they do have, because even for adults that can be a challenging question. We don't often talk about ourselves, and so we don't always lean into the strengths, abilities, and gifts that we have, because those are natural. It's just naturally what we do, and we don't think about them as being special. And it's the same with that particular age group. They could have taught their younger siblings how to navigate elementary school or high school, or even taught them, how to manage a budget in the household with the money that they get from their parents. They could have taught many things. And so that teaching element becomes something that, oh, I can do this. So having that conversation and drawing out from them who they really are, where their passions lie, what gifts, abilities, and talents, that all becomes a part of that conversation to help guide them to, well, what do I really want to do when I grow up?
Absolutely. So Pam, we talk about this alignment and trying to navigate. How does financial literacy play a role in young people learning how to take care of money, how not to spend it wisely? Because, according to kids, we're the bank. And so everything comes from us. But that financial literacy is important. Where does that fit in the grand scheme of helping them go from being my mom or my parent is the bank to I need to start taking care of now some of these financial things?
Mm-hmm. And, Katrina had mentioned that, as early as you can start having these conversations and normalizing the conversations about money. We have, with our kids, the talk, kind of the birds and the bees. It should be the same thing with your finances, really learning about money early on in your household, having those family meetings, like Katrina had mentioned before, and talking about money and how to, spend, how to save, how to, maybe give to charity, kind of this 3-3-3 system that I taught my children earlier on as well, but really normalizing that conversation about it. I know we are really jaded when it comes to money conversations. You don't have to share everything, with your child, but how much that the average salary that you make in the household, what comes into the household, what goes out, really kind of sharing your experience with them so they can kind of see what it's going to look like on the other side when they do become adults, and see what all, I kind of kid around with my boys now that they're actually working for me in my firm as well. But when they were growing up, and now that they can kind of see where their expenses are, they're saying, adulting is hard, but I'm glad that you taught me early on what to expect and the things I need to be spending on.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. I hope that those of you who are watching are taking notes and putting some of these things in your balanced living toolkit. When we come back after the break, let's talk a little bit about the emotional distress attached to independence. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can see, these are the days in which we are trying to navigate not only helping young people manage their own lives, but also managing who we are as adults in that space, giving them the guidance and the direction that they need. And a part of the struggle that comes with this balanced living or trying to figure out how to navigate all of these new things that are going to be on their plate is emotional distress attached to independence. Let's talk about that, ladies, because there are times that, let's just say, for most of our young people, they're coming through or have come through this COVID pandemic age. And a lot of their social, emotional engagement was lacking because they didn't have opportunity to really talk openly to people. They were at home on computers, just networking with peers. And whereas peers are great, you need adults in your life to kind of help give you guidance and direction. So how do we help young people, especially those who are saying, I want to move out on my own, I want to have my own place, the quotes, when I get out my mama house, all of these things, there is some emotional distress, critical thinking, common sense, logic and reasoning. Katrina, how do we help young people set the stage and a good foundation for helping them recognize that common sense is an important component to daily living?
So let's first start with common sense isn't common. Okay, let's just debunk that myth. Common sense is not common. We all bring into what we're doing our own background experiences and the way that we were raised, right? And so as we prepare young people to move to the next level, they celebrated their high school graduation and they're like, oh, deuces, I can't wait to be out, get away from my mom, she nags, da 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 da. But if we have not taken the time to have the conversation with our children so that when they're able to move out, they know that they need a first month, last month, and a security deposit to pay their rent, where they're going. They need to know how to budget for groceries. Do they know how to shop? Do they know to have an entertainment fund for the nights they want to go to B-Wings and go to the movies and hang out? What does that look like? So preparation is key about setting this all up. I know in a lot of school districts, they offer a personal finance class. Make sure, if it's not mandatory, that you enroll your child in that before they graduate high school. That helps them learn how to set a budget. That lets them learn how to know what to navigate and what they can let go and what they must have. Water is not free, people. We pay electric bills. How much do I need to budget for gas for the car that my parents pay for? How much is insurance on that car? Because once I move out, maybe my parents aren't going to pay the insurance for me. So there are key things that we need to be sharing in these conversations with our youth so that it's not all of a sudden a surprise. I recommend a personal finance class. Reach out to some of your tax accountants. You'd be surprised. They may offer a workshop for your children. You get a couple of parents together so they can sit and talk to them about what a budget looks like, what it looks like to plan and to be meaningful with your money. And do you have enough money to do the things that you want to do? Our children live a lifestyle because of what we make, not what they make. So just be mindful of that and help impart that to them that, hey, you live like that, you dress like that, you eat like that because I work like that. And so if you want to live this lifestyle, this is what it's going to take.
I think that that's valuable because oftentimes we don't have those conversations, Pam, around money at the table, at the park. Anytime you can toss in a conversation about money, that it costs to live, and that oftentimes that living is going to be required to be on their own dime. What are some of the tips that you have that can help not only parents or grandparents who are raising these young people, and then young people who are like, I'm really ready to go and I don't want to live in my parents' basement, and why they making me pay rent? All these things that come up with, now you have to figure out how to live on your own. What does that look like? And how do we move them toward getting out of being emotionally distressed with independence?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot, on them, as I mentioned before. I get it a lot with my kids, and I hear it from their friends as well. Is that adulting is hard, but if we can explain, as Katrina had mentioned before, the preparation part of it. You don't want to just throw them out and they're surprised that now, like you said, I got to pay for electric, I got to pay for rent, I got to pay all of these things that they were accustomed to the lifestyle that we gave them. And now they have to be on their own, and that lifestyle looks totally different from the way they grew up. So it is going to be emotionally distressed at first, but you explain to them, this is what you have. This is how you are going to sustain your lifestyle based on what you are bringing in, and really help them navigate what that could look like. Maybe you're not going to be, balling every day on buying out, eating out, buying DoorDash or, Starbucks or whatever. Really kind to say, okay, these are treats that now that it was maybe something that you were doing all the time. Now they're treats, and you can do them every now and then. But these are the core expenses that you need to be accounted for, and you make sure that they have enough in there. And then everything else is basically the things that what I call discretionary spending on that. But really going through and preparing your child for the things that now they were used to, things being taken care of before. Now they have to do these things on their own.
So you talk about discretionary income. Does that mean that perhaps they need to get a part-time job in the summer so that when they, want to have these special treats, they know they're not coming from mom or dad or granny's pocket, but they're coming from their own? Because this whole navigating being a young adult, they still want us to think of everything for them. I cannot stress enough, how do we help them figure out this critical thinking component of young adulting? Like, you've got to start thinking before executing. Help me, Pam, help me.
And that's the thing. It's about, helping them know what's coming up, and then helping them through that process the first time, and then slowly weaning them off of that advice. Okay, this happened the first time. How did you, this is how you should approach it. Or going to say, how would you do it? And then maybe guide them a little bit. I would say they're driving the bus and I'm just kind of navigating from there. But the first time that they do it, maybe guide them through. The second time, okay, now you have to start making that decision on your own. The third time, it's totally you. Don't come to me with that. We went over this before. And definitely to your point, really, if anything else above what they have budgeted for, go out and, get a part-time job, consult, do what you need to do to cover those discretionary expenses. If you want that lifestyle and that lifestyle costs a certain amount and you don't have it right now, there are resources that you can go get a part-time job to cover those discretionary expenses.
I appreciate the reiteration of that because, Deb, when young people are trying to find their way, they have a tendency to get upset. They are not logically thinking that it's no longer the adult's responsibility in their life to give them things, but to train and prepare them to get those things on their own. What are some of your coaching tips related to helping these high schoolers and young adults navigate this new landscape of their lives?
I love what Katrina and Pam talked about in asking the question. Well, since this is what you want to do, let me hear how you plan to make it happen, because it puts the onus on them to begin to think it through. And as Pam said, then we can add in some guidance. It is critical that, and I recognize the mistakes that I made with my son. I always wanted to give him the answer. And not allow him the privilege and the opportunity to think through it for himself. And as soon as I realized that mistake, I began to back up and just ask questions. I think that helps them begin to process and own the thing for themselves. And then providing resources. So talking with students on campus in particular, there are resources on campus that can help students, especially first generation students, students who are underserved, underprivileged. They can go to, there's a federally funded program on campuses that most students probably have never heard of called TRIO. And not only do they provide a financial literacy course for the students, they provide additional resources to them, funding in particular. They provide exposure to cultural events. And so taking part in those kinds of things, whether you're on campus or through other programs in the community, will help you to help students to begin to engage at a different level and then on their terms. So I think it's important, not for students, again, college students, don't just stay in your room. Get out and begin to explore what's available. On most campuses, if the school does not have a office of career and calling, or a office for finding jobs and internships, there's usually a link where jobs are posted. And so there are opportunities for students to gain some type of income from working in places that are approved by the university, that would be safe and safe environments for them. And then places that will work with their schedule. So encouraging students to explore. Don't just sit there thinking, oh, I don't know how to figure this out. I'm on my own now and I don't know what to do. What do I do? What do I do? Go talk to someone, a teacher, one of the people in the provost office or your department. They'll be able to guide you on options that you will have. And then begin to just write down, what do you want? What do you need? And then maybe brainstorm with some other students or your professor just about options that you have, because sometimes when we're in a space, we don't realize that we have options. And so that those kinds of things for the student to do on their own can be very helpful in their maturation and their own growth. But they have to take the initiative to get out and explore it.
I appreciate that. Folks, when we come back after the break, I want to dive in to communication and the readiness to have different kinds of conversations. I understand for young people that life is hard and life be lifing and all of those kinds of things that we say today. But there's a certain way that you bring communication to the table when you want something from someone else. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, discovering what it looks like and having these substantive communication conversations with our young people is important. Let's bring everybody back in because, you all mentioned something that is critical, and it's communication and how we talk to other people. And I know sometimes that it is difficult, y'all, for young people to talk to adults about grown folk things. So when we're talking about having these communication-based conversations with young people, parents don't always want to tell what's happening with the finances. And then kids often get offended when they're told no. It's like they've never been told no all their lives. And then all of a sudden they're on their own. They've graduated high school and y'all are laying down these ground rules. So let's talk about how to have conversations that don't lead to arguments. Because I hear a lot of, you never support me. I never get to do what I want to do, and all of these kinds of things. And somewhere there's just this breakdown all the way around. So I'm going to start with Deb. So Deb, talk to us about how do we get young people in this season of I'm learning how to advocate for myself. I want to talk to you like I'm an adult without talking to you like you're an adult. You know what I mean? So how do we have these conversations without the attitude?
Yeah, that's a good question, because once a student realizes they're headed toward freedom, there's a shift in how they think about the parental relationship. And depending on the mode of communication that you've had with your children, that shift could go one way or the other. And so what you want to occur is to be able to respect where they are while recognizing that they're not fully able to manage what they think they can manage, but still talk to them as if you're talking to not just a child, but a new adult.
I like the way you phrase that.
Of mutual respect that's required so that that conversation goes smoothly and does not turn into an argument. And so, as with most conversations, when the word you need to do this and you need to do that, when those phrases come along, it can create a tension. And that's not really what you want to occur. You want them to feel their freedom and liberation, but also understand that they're still dependent on you as the parent for resources that belong to you. Right. And so in the conversation, being able, again, to allow them to feel like an adult, that they have graduated, by asking, again, using questions instead of direct phraseology that kind of tells them what to do. And then allowing them to come back into you with their questions and their openness to be guided and offered direction. So there's a give and a take there, that sometimes as parents, we just want to tell them what to do. Look, you need to do this. You haven't done this, and what's going to happen with that? And so as opposed to being a little abrasive, kind of pull back a little bit and hear them and help them to see that they don't know what they think they know, and then allow them to ask for your guidance and direction.
I have so many questions. Oh my God, I have so many questions, but I'm going to hold my question because I need to run over real quick to Katrina, because Katrina, I heard what Deb said and you want to give them space, but is it challenging for parents to kind of engage their newly minted young adult in adult conversations without jumping back into parent mode? Because this seems very stressful for everybody trying to navigate this new young adult landscape. Help the people, because I would almost be at a loss with, I know my temperament in engagement with some of that with young people.
It's a challenge, okay? It's a challenge. There is no handbook for this, people. There is no handbook. It's a challenge because you've been a parent, you've been guiding them, shaping them, get up, eat this, wear this, do that, and then boom, they wake up and now you're supposed to turn the reins over and they're in control of their own life. And so it is a challenge. And how do you start to balance this? This becomes a balancing act. One of the best ways to think about it, remember when you graduated high school? Remember how you wanted your mama to let go a little? You want to build that balance so that the child always feels comfortable coming back to you to ask questions. If you make it too uncomfortable, they won't come back. If you nag, you know, we know everything, and they think they know everything. So between the two of y'all know everything, and you don't know anything. Life is nothing but learning, a continual cycle. So as a parent, you have to be open to let that child go. Let them make some mistakes, but always leave the door open so that they are comfortable coming back to you to ask for help or to ask for questions or direction. Remember, we don't get it right all the time, but when we do get it right, it's wonderful. So make sure as you're preparing your child for adulthood, that we go back to one of the things we've been talking about, that critical thinking. That critical thinking shouldn't start the day they graduate. You should have been preparing them all along the way. What are your thoughts about this? How would you handle it? I know what I would do, but I'd like to hear how you would handle it. Engage in that type of conversation. Have that kind of conversation as open-ended. So, you know, I was talking to so-and-so, and she said her daughter was going to do this. What would you do? Have that conversation so they get to process real life situations and they're open to talking to you.
I can respect that. I tell you, one of my favorite quotes is from Finding Nemo as it relates to young people. How do you ever expect them to learn anything if you never let them go out and learn anything? And I think that that's a very valid quote when we think about how far, I think Pam mentioned this, and I'm coming to you, Pam, related to releasing the reins or giving them the reins. And I think that there is this balance between relaxing the reins, severing ties, and then just handing everything over to them. How do we balance those things as adults? And especially if you're in a two-parent household, because oftentimes, even when kids get older, it's always, let me go ask dad, let me go ask mom, let me go ask granny, let me go ask grandpa. So this communication to try to get what we want, how do we help break some of these cycles of dysfunction in families when communication is not always at its best?
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge, as Katrina said. There's no handbook for this. You have to, there ebbs and flows with it, and you learn as a parent how to navigate, especially if you have multiple children. It's like, okay, I did that once, I'm not going to do it with this one, and each child is different anyway. But as you get to that stage, you're going to have those arguments. I mean, without a doubt. I have 3 kids, and I've been through all of the arguments as they were starting to spread their wings, so to speak, and be on their own. But you learn from those arguments and hear them and the validity of their arguments as well. But it is a challenge for, as Katrina had mentioned, you have, from 0 to 18, basically, you were telling them what to do, what to wear, all of these different things. And then all of a sudden, now we have to transfer that over. I just suggest giving it to them in doses. So yes, when that first year of college, you're probably going to be a little bit more engaged on, this is some things you may want to consider. These are some things you should be doing. And then slowly start to wean them off of that so you can give them that independence, those wings to grow without having to run back, but leaving that door open, as Katrina had mentioned, so you can have those more adult conversations. For example, like I said, both of my boys work for me, and that was a challenge for now. I raised my babies and now they're working for me and they have their own capacities, and being able to allow them to be professionals without stepping in as mom was also a challenge. So you're going to learn. There's going to be some ebbs and flows. There's going to be some ups and downs, but opening and keeping the line of communications open is where you need to focus in on.
So when you talk about this line of communication, is the communication different for boys versus girls? Katrina, you have boys and girls. Deb, a boy. Pam, you got one of each. Two
boys and
a girl. So is that communication different for each of them? Do you communicate with your kid, Katrina, as the son versus your daughter? What does that look like, and how does that sound?
Yes and yes. Communication is different because remember, your daughter, through those teenage years, sometimes you felt like you didn't know which one of y'all were going to survive. And I always said I would come out on top. So talking to a daughter is different than talking to your sons. I have great love for all three, but our conversations are different. And as adults, I make time to have a conversation with all three. In the Smith household, I don't care where you live or where you are, you talk to your mom at least once a week. And so our conversations are different. Because of what they do in their life, their career, raising children, what they are striving to do in the work area. So each time you meet with that child, there's something that is so awesome and just unique to having that conversation. But one thing I will tell you, when you say, is it different between a girl and a boy? That girl sometimes will test your inner gangster. And so as a female, I have to remind myself of that because I'm like, nothing will test your inner gangster sometime but your children. And so you have to think about that when you are having that conversation. I always am reflective about how would I want my mom to listen to me? How would I want my mom to respond to me? And I try to always do that in the conversation. Like, okay, I might not would do what they say, but I'm going to keep my mind open and I'm going to be an attentive listener to what they're saying and take it in.
I want to finish this conversation on the other side of the break. When we come back, let's talk about a summer of transition and dive a little bit more into these conversations that we should be having between our sons and our daughters. And if that conversation is being held with the mom or the dad or the other male figure or female figure in their lives. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, oh my goodness, you graduated high school. Now what? It's a lot for both the child and the adults in their lives. And so as we continue to navigate what it looks like, let's give our audience some tips and tools that they can put in their toolkit as it relates to this summer of transition. Yeah, you got your high school diploma. You've had a good time, these first several weeks. Now what? What are you doing with the rest of the summer? And how do you continue to have these conversations with the people in your lives? Pam, let's talk about that for a moment. Now you have 2 sons and a daughter, and those conversations, as Katrina mentioned, can be quite different. And with you being in the wealth space, what does your summer of transition with your kids look like as it relates to finances? and being able to navigate their own lives?
Yes. So the summer transition is really about figuring out what's going to happen that first semester. So, in terms of academics, but financially, okay, if you got financial aid or, things are paid up, really, what do you do with that? What do you do with that extra money? So really at this point, you're really devising a budget, a spending strategy on the things that they are going to need. And then we talked a little bit about discretionary and some things they want to keep for fun. Or if they have a credit card, tell them the uses of when to use your card for emergencies, not the pizza party, because you're going to be spending the rest of your life paying for a pizza party with interest. So I always tell them, use your credit wisely if you do have it as well. This is also a time to really talk to them about now, especially if they transition and going to a college. When they hit 18, you're not going to get those notifications that you did in high school. Teachers are not going to send you, hey, your kid didn't do X, Y, Z, or something happened with financial aid. All of that's going to go now to your child. And so you need to explain to them, I am not going to be able to get grades. I'm not going to be able to communicate with them unless there is a form that you can write off on and say you can communicate with your parent. But go through that with them. Make sure they are looking at their correspondence, their email, their text, or however they're getting that information, because it could be important. Case in fact, my son, he got a scholarship to a Division III school. He was playing football for a while there. There was extra money available. Did I know it was extra money available he can get contact to? No, I didn't. It was sent directly to him and he missed out on some money. So I tell them, look at your email messages or text message or however they could communicate with you to make sure you are taking advantage of the things that are available to you. But this is the time where you are going to go over with your child some of the things that are going to happen, some of the things to look out for, developing that spending and budget with them, and also the uses of using responsible credit responsibly.
Mm. Yeah, we're not going to talk about using credit responsibly because, that was a whole tragic fiasco that took me 10 years to get out of. Yes, Deb. So what does the summer of transition look like for young people as they're navigating graduating high school and either starting college or going to career technical school or, just taking I don't believe in gap years, so don't ask me about that, people. But for those who may want to partake, what does the summer of transition look like?
Yeah, the summer of transition. This is a time when you need to investigate and understand what your daily routine is going to be like and how is it going to change so that you put in place for yourself some things that will help you be successful as you're moving forward. Now, if you're used to your mom or somebody in the house waking you up, you need an alarm clock. So make sure that you have an alarm clock so that you make it to class in time. Now, when you set your schedule, if you're not a morning person, don't sign up for 8 a.m. class because you're not going to make it. I mean, just simple kinds of things. If you're able to start your day later in the morning, 10 o'clock class, just pay attention and recognize how your routine from high school to college is going to change. Plan. Get yourself a planner so you can write things down to keep up with your schedule. Pam mentioned a critical thing. You need to check those emails. Because that's a thing that so many students fail to do and miss out on different opportunities. So just take account of how your day-to-day routine is going to change. And now you're in control of it. So how do you want to set up your time? How do you want to navigate your week? When is your study time? When are the times that you go to the library, aside from the times that you're in class? What times do you have to make sure that you get to bed on time? What time is that? You need to think about those things during the summer so that you can then prepare yourself and put things in place so that you navigate that transition to college very well. Take advantage, learn what resources are available to you. There's tutoring on campus if you need that. Know where to sign up and find that. Spend time on the college campus if you can, just moving around the campus to see where things are before your first day. Know when you need to check in if you're staying in the dorm. Know when move-in day is. These things are critical. And if you allow your summer to get away from you, you're going to start in a rush, and you don't want to do that to yourself. So plan ahead.
Absolutely. Katrina, that summer of transition for kids can often be a daunting task. That task comes from, not being prepared, not being equipped for the things that they need to do. At what point would a parent be listening for their kid to come and tell them things that they need to be doing? Because at some point you have to see a shift in the conversation in this summer of transition. How does that work?
Oh boy, I would get a different question. So, so when you're looking for this shift, one of the things I would say is plan a family outing. Remove yourself from your normal household, but plan some family outing time where it's in a different environment and that you can have that conversation. As you start to look at what's going to happen with your child that's transitioning, look for signs that they may want to be alone. Are they pulling back? Look and see what's happening with their friend groups. Are they disengaged with their friends, or are they spending an abundant amount of time with friends? I think, one of the things you talked about early on, it was like, what would you put in the toolkit? And one of the things I would suggest is I would recommend the books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Maybe you and your child engage in reading that book as a book together so that you can then have a conversation about what it's going to take for them to be effective, because every child is not going to college. Some of them are going into the military. Some of them are going into right into community college, or some of them are going immediately into work. And so having those skills and thinking about it during this transition of summer, help them create a plan. Do they create a 3-month plan, a 6-month plan? Talk about what are their goals over the next 3 months. I know Jacquie said she doesn't believe in gap year, but are you going to work over the summer? Are you going to save that money for the lifestyle that you want to live because you've already developed your goal for 3 to 6 months? Are you going to start journaling about what is happening in your life and what is changing? I think from a parent's point of view, as you start to be more observant about your child's demeanor, are they depressed? What are they not doing that they used to do? Are they not engaged in regular family life? Those are all things to watch as they transition, because some students will mourn going to school because that is their comfort level. They know what to do. They've done school well for 13 plus years. That is what they know. And now they don't have that to fall back on. So they miss that. Even though they tell you they want the freedom, they miss that because that is what they have known and grown accustomed to. So making sure you're attuned to that young person and what they are feeling and the emotions that they're exuding is very important for helping them transition over the summer. I think the more time you can spend with them, the more you can pour into them, the more wisdom you can share with them, all matters, because they will need that later in life.
I think that's an excellent segue to our final question for this block. One for each of you. When we talk about the letting go, and as Katrina mentioned, taking that time, for parents, it's difficult. They're going to, for those that are going to college or to the military, they're going to load up these cars. They're going to send their kids on and they're all together. And then they're going to drive back, by themselves with all these memories and all these thoughts. What is the 1 or 2 things that each of you did when you released your child to doing what they have set out to do. They've done the planning. They've come to you with the conversations. They've, made their notes and you checked them off and you signed off on everything. What is the thing that you would tell the parents who are about to ship their little person off to wherever it is they're going to be going? I'll start with Deb. What was the one thing you want to help a parent or parents or grandparents put in their toolkit to be at ease with releasing their child to move forward?
Well, for me, one of the things I had to realize, and I'll have to admit that my son helped me to realize, the things that I had put in him were there, and he was able to draw on them. There was a particular incident that occurred where he needed to be responsible for something. And as a parent, I was watching to see if he would take responsibility and what that would look like. And to my amazement, he did a great job. First, at saying to me, "Mom, I got it. I know what to do. I got it." So even before I could begin to tell him what to do, which would have been my go-to in that situation, he affirmed to me, "I got it. Here are the steps I'm taking. And if this doesn't work and I need some help, I'll come back and ask." Mm-hmm. And so having had that encounter helped me to be confident and a little bit more comfortable with the fact that he'd be on his own. Because now I can see, okay, you are taking responsibility for your actions. You have thought through this process. Okay, I can step back. But it still wasn't easy because, again, I was that parent that went right in to tell him what to do. So parents, trust that you've done the work to put your student, your child, in the best position that you can. And the rest is up to God to guide and direct them. Now, that doesn't mean that you go away, that you just walk away from them. You still need to be present enough that if they need you, you're there. Or if you see certain behavior or certain things happen, that you can jump in again and ask if they need some help or to just be present to listen. But for parents, that you put it in them, then allow them to walk it out.
Absolutely. Pam, what does that look like for parents in their summer of transition, and how do you help them?
Besides having a box of tissue on the way back home. You never know how emotional that departure is until it actually happens. And that happened with my daughter the first time. She went to school in New York. So it was a long distance where she went away. And so on the way back, I was just like bursting into tears. But, really, as Deb had said, it is in there. I just, case in point, she had called me, several months afterwards and told me, how she did XYZ, and she economized and she was able to get all of this for under budget. And so I was like, okay, great. It was in there. It came out. So really, that is where you really need to focus in on. If you did the preparation, you prepared your child. Once you release the reins and you on that long car ride home with your box of tissues, know that they are going to be okay. And they'll definitely, call you when they need you. My daughter, for the first time when she was away, she had called me. It's like, I don't feel well. I'm not going to go to class. And I was like, okay. So it was like, she had to, be like, I would have to call the school type of thing in the past. And I was like, now, go to the student health or do what you need to do. But, you don't have to call me every time. You don't have to go to class because you don't feel well. But they will call you the times that they think they need you and just help them navigate along the way. They'll be just fine.
I love that because it also ties back into what we were saying before about one of you mentioned that your child will reach out to you because you've opened that line of communication. And when you least expect it, that still gives you comfort that everything that you put in there deposited will come out when they need it. And they appreciate having, that door open and that opportunity to just keep the new type of young adult to adult conversation going. Katrina, other than a box of tissue, other than knowing that it's in there, how do we help parents, navigate their summer of transition?
So it is the parent's summer of transition as well as the student. And what I would say to you is definitely pray over your child and pray over yourself. But then after that, find you a good group of friends that you can start enjoying your next phase of life. Take time for yourself, because as you're transitioning, you will now have more opportunities to do things that maybe you put on hold. So take the time, smell the roses, and enjoy redefining who you are in this stage of life.
I love that. Thank you all for weighing in. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflection.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can see, you graduated high school. Now what? It's not just for the student. It's also for the parent. Parents have a way of, being emotionally invested in what happens next to their child, just as much as the child wants to know that you have taught them everything that they need to know in order to be able to at least navigate their summer of transition, get into that career, get into that school, be away from you for a while. Even though you cut a few cords, they recognize and realize that you're always going to be there. I hope that today you have put some things in your toolkit that will allow you to feel comfortable now that your young person has graduated high school and you prepare them for their next level of adulting. Thanks for watching. Bye now.